Good afternoon, guys. Mr. Monk here. I'm just going to come to you this afternoon to give you a short video uh, to supplement your reading of Section 1, Chapter 23, of course, Comparative Economic Systems. We are going to change our focus and talk about some different economic systems. I know we talked about earlier in the year that we wanted to do this. But I want to focus in on these few sections for the next couple of weeks because it's very important for you to understand the different economic systems that make up uh, really the world economy, and will give you just a little bit better information so you can understand kind of how decisions are made in terms of economic decisions, not only that private individuals make, but that governments make throughout the world. So we're going to start with Section 1, which focuses on capitalism. And a lot of what you hear today is going to seem very familiar to you because the United States is a capitalist economy or a free market economy. Uh, there's several different terms that is used to describe the American economy. But a lot of these ideas will seem very familiar to you today. But then we'll talk about some things different systems such as socialism and communism that will seem a little bit different to you. All right, so there are various questions, right, that we've talked about numerous times in class and in this book in general, right? So questions like, what are the functions a government ought to undertake? All right, or what should it have the power to do? All right, what should it not be allowed to do? Certainly, these questions, right, can be asked really about all areas of human activity, but they are raised very significantly in the realm of economic affairs, right? So, a fact is, questions of politics and economics, right, are really inseparable, right? The most important economic questions faced by a nation are also political questions. So, for instance, who should decide what goods will be produced, right? How should goods and services be distributed and exchanged within a nation? And what types of income or property ought to be taxed? Or maybe kind of what you've heard more recently, what social services should governments provide to its citizens? So, capitalism provides one response, or really one response to all of these different questions, right? Capitalism, right, defined by your book, is an economic system in which individuals are free to own the means of production and maximize profits. Many aspects of capitalism will be familiar to you, just like I said, because the United States and many other nations in the world today have adopted this economic system. So first of all, let's talk about the factors of production, and this is kind of essential to not only understanding capitalism, but socialism and communism as well. So certain resources across the board, no matter what system you're talking about, are necessary to any nation's economy. Economists call these basic resources, which are used to make all goods and services. All right, the factors of production, and this is what is the basis of producing goods and services. These are things that must be there and things you must have. So let's talk through these quickly. So the first one is land. Okay. Land, right, which is in economic terms includes all natural resources, is an important factor of production. Land has a variety of economic uses, as you probably can expect, such as agriculture, mining, forestry, along with farms and other property. Economists categorize the water and rivers and lakes and the coal, iron, and petroleum found beneath the ground as part of the land itself. So when we talk in terms of land, we're not talking about just land kind of in general, what we think about without all the added natural resources. But in economic terms, we're talking about everything, right? What is contained under the ground, under the land, and what is contained on the land in terms of natural resources. The second factor of production we're going to talk about is capital. All right, and this is not capital in terms of the capital of a state, but for instance, we're talking about economic capital. Or human-made resources, right, that are used to produce goods and services. So physical capital, or also called capital goods, includes the buildings, machines, computers, and other materials workers need to turn land, and another factor, labor, into goods and services. So these are kind of all the man-made, right, um, factors or pieces, okay, that are used to turn land and labor into goods and services. All right, and now let's talk about labor. Yet another factor of production is human resources. This comes from human beings or labor. All right, so men and women, right, who work in mines, factories, offices, hospitals, and other places all provide labor, right? So those businesses, those factories, and places such as those, they don't work without human labor. People have to be there in some capacity. You may have robots, you may have machines that are doing a lot of the work, but the labor of people is very essential for those businesses to work. In a capitalist or free market economy, individuals own their labor and can sell it to any employee. So human capital also includes all the knowledge and skills that workers gain from their work experience, right? Which is really an investment in themselves. So labor in a capitalist system is owned by the individual, right? So if you go and you apply for a job, right, you are offering your labor based on your choice, right? No one is necessarily making you, unless your parents, right, are making you get a job, but you own your labor. And that kind of works the same, right? If you're already at a job and you get a better job offer, and right, your contract's at an end if you have a contract, and you make the choice to move jobs, right? You make the choice. You own your labor. So one who owns capital and puts it to productive use is called a capitalist. So if you go to college and you gain a lot of knowledge that is useful and is wanted by someone in the world, right, by a corporation or by a company, and you put that knowledge, okay, that capital to use, you're a capitalist, all right? So the American economy is called capitalistic because its growth depends very largely on the energy and drive of thousands of individual capitalists, not the government. So the capitalist system depends upon the actions, the choices of individual capitalists, okay, who are putting all the factors of production that they have together, trying to do what they can, right, to make use of their capital. All right, so now let's talk about an entrepreneur. All right, it's probably a word you've heard of before, but an entrepreneur literally is an enterpriser, okay, or an individual with a drive and ambition to combine land, labor, and capital resources to produce goods or offer services and is willing to risk losses and failure. So this is someone who has the means, okay, to take the factors of production, land, okay, capital, and labor, put them together, okay, and make a decision in terms of what avenue to pursue to produce a certain type of good or a certain type of service, and they're willing to risk losing it all, okay, or losing some, and or failure or success. All right, that's an entrepreneur. All right, entrepreneurs start businesses and make them grow, creating jobs and goods and services that contribute to a high standard of living. All right. So let's talk about a free enterprise system. So capitalism is frequently referred to as free enterprise system, which is an economic system characterized by the private ownership of capital and by investments that are in turn determined by private decision, not by public authority. So under a free enterprise system, the economy needs a free market. All right, a market in which buyers and sellers are free to buy and sell as they wish. All right, so a free market is most likely to exist in a democratic nation such as the United States, right, where security and the rule of law are protected by the government, right? So a free enterprise system lets consumers, entrepreneurs, and workers enjoy freedom of choice, right? So consumers can choose from a variety of products and services, right? When you go to a store and you want to choose a new pair of shoes, right? You have a choice whether you want to buy a pair of Nike or a pair of Adidas or anything like that, or clothes, or anything you want to talk about, right? You have a choice as a consumer. A capitalistic system free enterprise system is based on four fundamental factors, right? Private ownership, individual initiative, profit, and competition. And these are going to be the four that we're going to talk about really quickly. All right. So private ownership. In a capitalistic system, private individuals and companies own most of the factors of production. Right? Those basic factors we talked about. They decide. Private individuals decide how this productive property will be used. Right? And what the property produces, right, is theirs. Right? So the owner's productive property are sometimes individuals, but more often they are groups of people who share ownership of a company. And in a free enterprise system, individuals own the right to their own labor. Right? So the protection of the rights of private ownership is also important, right? Particularly in the United States. So of course our Constitution under the 5th and the 14th Amendments declare that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or without due process of law. So the Fifth Amendment also says that just compensation must be given to people when their private property is taken for some public use. Right? So a very essential and important in a capitalist system or a free enterprise system is the idea of the protection of private ownership. It must be protected in order for that system to work. Another fundamental factor is individual initiative, right? So in our economy in the United States today, entrepreneurs are an essential factor in the production of goods and services, right? We need people to put those factors of production together to essentially take risks, create goods and services. So under a free enterprise system, all individuals are free to start and run their own businesses. They are also free to dissolve those businesses, right? Profits don't look good. You're not really making money for the second year in a row. Shut the company down and pay the rest of your bills. All right, things doing great. Company remains open. All right, importantly, the atmosphere of a free market as well as a free society that encourages the exchange of ideas can and often does lead to innovation in scientific and technological discoveries, right? When people are making money, people are finding success, people are finding satisfaction in the work they're doing, right? It encourages the exchange of ideas. It opens up opportunities, okay, that can and often do lead to innovations, right, in the scientific realm and the technological. Because people are pursuing multiple rewards, right? The satisfaction of being successful, profits, and various other things. All right, so let's talk about that. Profit. So just as individuals are free to choose how they will spend or invest their capital in a free enterprise system, they are also entitled to benefit from whatever their investment or enterprises earns or gains in values, right? Individuals are free to choose. They make individual free choices, right? Taking those risks that their money or that their capital, that they could lose it or that they could gain more, right? So they are entitled to their profits. All right, so the profit motive is the desire to gain from business dealings. It drives entrepreneurs to create goods and services people will want to buy, and is a major reason why entrepreneurs are willing to take risks, right? People are willing to take risks to make more money. All right, and then competition. So the freedom to enter or start a new business at any time leads to competition, right? Because if I'm free to start a business, right, and I have the means to do so, Mr. Jones wants to start kind of the same business, but we have two different names and offer kind of the same product, but just a little bit different. Well, he's got the right to do so too, right? And competition is a very fundamental part or factor or of a capitalistic system. Right, competition is a situation in which a number of companies offer similar products or services. They must compete against one another for customers, right? In a free economic system or a free enterprise system, competition often helps to hold down prices and keep quality high, right? Companies are trying to produce the best product for the lowest price, right? So this is good for the consumer because we get better products, hopefully at a very protected price, or a price that was good kind of for everybody. So under these competitive conditions, the law of supply and demand determines the market price for goods or services, right? So supply is the quantity of goods or services available for the sale at a range of prices. So as right, the price increases, more of a product will be offered for sale, all right? But if demand is great, right, and you don't have as many products being produced, right, that could lead to an increase in prices, right? But as the price falls, more of a product will be demanded by buyers. If supply increases and demand remains the same, prices will fall, right? But as we know, competition does not always work smoothly, right? So sometimes firms or businesses will try to create a situation kind of where they're the only source of a product, where they can determine the total price of a product, and that's called a monopoly, right? So throughout the history of the United States, our government gradually grew hostile to a degree to monopolies, particularly in the late 19th century. And of course, in 1890, the Sherman Antitrust Act was passed, which remains the basic law to curb monopolies today. Right? And it prohibits every contract, combination in the form of a trust or otherwise, or conspiracy and restraint of trade or commerce among the several states or with foreign nations. So essentially to protect consumers, to make sure that competition is guaranteed under the capitalistic system. All right, so let's talk about laissez-faire theory, and then we'll get in a little bit into a mixed economy. So early capitalist philosophers believed that if only government would not interfere, the free enterprise system would work automatically. So no government involvement or intervention really, and the free enterprise system would just work. Just let it work. Just let people work. Let the system work. All right. So Adam Smith presented the classic expression of that view in his book, The Wealth of Nations, in 1776. Smith wrote that when all individuals are free to pursue their own private interests, an indivisible hand, works to promote the general welfare. In short, Smith introduced laissez-faire capitalism. So laissez-faire theory holds that government should play only a very limited, hands-off role in society, right? So government activity should be refined to just a few things under this theory. 1, foreign relations and national defense. 2, the maintenance of police and courts to protect private property and the health, safety, and morals of the people. And 3, those few other functions that cannot be performed by private enterprise at a profit. So the proper role of government in economic affairs should be restricted to functions intended to promote and protect the free play of competition and the operation of the laws of supply and demand. So a very limited role of government in this idea or in this theory, right? Government should be limited to such a degree in which the laissez-faire system can play out and work as it should. But laissez-faire capitalism has never in fact operated right in the United States. But its concept has had a profound impact on the structure and the economic system in the United States. All right, so let's talk about a mixed economy. So although the American economic system is essentially private in character, when you look at the system as it is private in character, government has always played a large part in the economic system, right? So economists usually describe an economy in which private enterprise and governmental participation coexist as a mixed economy. And this is where you get the term mixed, right? Because you're mixing that government participation with the private enterprise, right? So government at every level really does regulate various features of American economic life. Among its many other functions, government prohibits trust, protects the environment, and ensures the quality of the food we eat. Government also promotes many aspects of American economic life. So it constructs roads and highways. It provides such services as public health programs, the census, the weather reports, and operates Social Security and other insurance programs. and it also offers a number of subsidies and various loan programs to help entrepreneurs and small businesses. Um, Federal, state, and local governments conduct some enterprises that might well be operated privately, for instance, like public education and the postal system, and municipal water and power systems. All right, so mixed economies are commonly found in Europe and in most former communist countries. In Britain, for instance, the government provides free medical care to all, which is a very important conversation going on in the United States right now. The government of the People's Republic of China owns steel mills and factories. Germany's federal government requires large companies to give workers representation on managing boards. And France once banned most companies from asking employees to work more than 35 hours per week. In each of these mixed economies, government intervention coexists with independent companies and market forces, all to various degrees, okay, and differ by really just certain factors. So let's talk about types of business organizations. So we're going to talk about sole proprietorships, partnerships, and corporations, and then we'll talk a little bit about profit and loss, and then we'll be done. So the American economy contains a number, of gigantic companies and thousands of employees, and factories and offices all over the world. But still, most of the businesses in the United States are still relatively small. So some 85% of all businesses in the United States employ fewer than 20 people. So 85% of the businesses in the United States, very much what we consider a small business. And three basic types of business organizations exist today, and that's sole proprietorship, partnerships, and corporations. So let's talk about those briefly. So sole proprietorships. So the word sole, right, meaning kind of lonely or one. Businesses owned by a single individual are called sole proprietorships. Typical business in this category, right, includes such enterprises as hair salons or auto repair shops or dentist offices. About 3/4 of all the businesses in this country are sole proprietorships. However, because most sole proprietorships are small, they produce only a minor fraction of annual sales in the United States. So make up a large percentage of the types of businesses, but they don't produce most of the income. So sole proprietorships are the most flexible form of business organization, though, if you think about it, because the owners, right, there's only a single owner, and they have the ability to make decisions and make them fairly quickly. A major disadvantage for sole proprietorships, though, is that, right, the owner is personally liable for the debts in business that the business might acquire. And it depends on the single owner's ability to contribute resources and manage the business. So, another form would be partnerships, right? And this partnership, all right, two people. Businesses owned by two or more individuals called partners are also known as partnerships. So lawyers and architects are great examples of among the professionals who often work together in partnerships. So one advantage of a partnership is that it can draw on the resources of more than one person, right? 2, 3, 4, 5 people can join together, put their resources together to run this business. Right? One of its disadvantages, though, is it can lead to conflict or disagreement between the different partners as which way the business should go, decisions about spending money or saving money, things such as that. All right, and then finally, let's talk about corporations. All right, that's right, and corporations include both very small companies and large multinational firms. So unlike partnerships, corporations almost always have many owners called shareholders. So, right, a share is a fraction of ownership in the corporation, and a shareholder is any person or group owning one or more shares. A corporation can continue indefinitely because a shareholder's death does not affect the legal status of the corporation. Right? It's made up of different shareholders. So, in other words, the corporation exists as its own legal entity, which is independent from the existence of any shareholders. And the Supreme Court held that under the 14th Amendment, a corporation occupies the same legal position as a person. So, corporations can draw their capital from hundreds or even thousands or even millions of investors. All right? This allows them to invest in costly projects Shareholders are responsible only for the amount of money they are invested. So if the business fails, they can lose that amount, but no more. Shareholders have limited liability and are not held responsible for any debts the corporation might have. But they do suffer this one disadvantage. The income that they do produce is taxed twice. First, the corporation pays a tax on its profits, and then the individual shareholders pay a tax on the dividends they produce. And then now let's talk about profit and loss, and we'll be done for the day. So what drives a capitalist economy? Have you thought about that question? I hope you have. But the best answer, probably most likely, is profit. All right? That's right. Your profit will be the amount of money you earn from the business after you have subtracted the cost involved in making the money. In this case, the purchase of an item, and the cost of operating it, plus whatever you pay yourself. Right. So, if earnings are less than the cost, the business has not made a profit. It has indeed suffered a loss. So taking risks and making investments are therefore an essential part of the capitalist system. Right? Every year, many businesses fail, and they don't produce a profit. But the businesses that do tend to survive are those whose owners have learned to make the most efficient use of the factors of production and use those factors in an advantageous way to make sure their company does survive, and that they do, in fact, make a profit, which makes them want to work harder and use the factors of production even more efficiently to produce more profits the next year. Okay, so in section 2, we will talk about socialism and communism. Now, make sure you guys fill out your discussion post and be looking forward to next week's video. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope you made it all the way to the end. And if you have any questions, be sure to let me know. All right, everybody, have a great afternoon. Thanks.